What's up, guys? Welcome to Rock Drumming 101. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is this is a lesson for beginners, okay? So if you're watching this, you're intermediate, you've been playing for maybe a year or for quite some time, and you are watching this lesson, it might be a little bit too basic for you, but like I said, it's Rock Drumming 101. So it's the essentials of rock, how to play rock, how to get yourself into the feel of rock. And by the end of this lesson, I promise you, by the end of this lesson, everyone here should be able to play along to a very simple rock tune. And I'm going to show you guys that tune. It's one of our Drumeo play-alongs called Highway to Rock, and it'll be a lot of fun. You guys are going to be able to do it by the end of this lesson. Okay? Sound good? And I've got Kyle in the back there. Kyle, are you with me?
You betcha.
Awesome. Okay, so let's just get going. Let's just start right at the very beginning, and that is, what is rock? Obviously, you know it's a genre of music. You listen to probably a lot of rock, AC/DC, Foo Fighters, Nirvana, all that kind of stuff. But as a drummer, what does that mean for us? There is a certain way to play rock, and this is something that I want to reiterate to everybody who's watching, who may be already being able to play these grooves and fills, and also to those who are just getting into rock. When you're playing rock, you want to have power and you want to have intensity. You want to have conviction with your playing. When you're playing a groove in a rock setting, you are the backbeat. You are creating that feel, you are creating the pulse, and you're driving the song for the most part. And if you're in that position, if you're sitting in that drummer's seat, you got to make sure what you're playing is cutting through. Now, I've seen a lot of drummers, beginners, post videos of them playing a rock beat, and they'll say, hey man, check out my rock beat here, and I'm going to show you what they do. There we go. Now I say to them, your timing is right, what you're playing is correct, and your feel, you know, your actual, well, I would say your feel, but your note spacing and everything is correct. So that should be rock. But when you listen back and you put that behind a song, it's not. It's just a very basic beat played softly. And that basic beat is the one we're talking about today, and it's going to be one that you'll hear in tons of different styles. You're going to hear it in pop. You're going to hear it in country. So the actual beat doesn't define the style of music you're playing, because I could play that same beat, like I said, in a bunch of different genres. What makes this beat sing in a rock setting is how you play it. And that's what I want to focus on right now. So when you're playing rock, you have to be powerful and you have to have conviction with your playing. What does that actually mean? It means hitting the drums a little bit harder and not second guessing yourself. So you're going to make mistakes when you start out. You're going to have issues with your timing. You might flam a couple notes, but as long as you're doing that with conviction, it's going to be a lot better for the other people around you. If you're playing something really soft, like I was showing you just in the demo before, it's going to be hard for your bass player or your guitar player to really get into it, kind of feel where your timing is, and you don't want to seem like you're all over the map. Even if you're kind of slowing down or speeding up as your own drummer in your own sense of time, as long as you're doing it powerful and with conviction, the other guys are going to follow you, okay? So when you're playing, anything you play, dig into it. Dig into your kick and snare. Now, hopefully you heard a difference just in the intensity that I was playing at. And that's one thing you're going to want to get on your own. So when you're playing this stuff, even before you go and practice these exact exercises that I'm going to show you, just practice kicking your drum or kicking your bass drum and hitting your snare a lot louder. Use your arm, use your wrists, try to get more power from it. And if you can, for the backbeat on your snare, try playing a rim shot. And a rim shot is basically hitting the rim and the head at the same time, like this. So I just wanted to talk briefly about how you play rock, because that's so important. A lot of the beats you might already know, you can apply to a rock setting, but you want to make sure it sounds like you're playing rock. It's like a guitar, so you can play a G chord, or you can play a G chord with distortion. You know, and they're two different sounds, and they got two different uses. Same goes with the drum kit. Okay, so that's the first thing, Rock 101. Make sure you're playing with power, intensity, and conviction. Now let's talk about the most important part of a drum beat in rock, and that is the backbeat and the downbeat. If you have a backbeat and a downbeat going and it's solid and it's in time and it's confident, you can basically get away with most rock songs out there. You don't even have to play your hi-hats or your ride cymbal. I'm going to show you. Here is the song we're going to go through. It's called Highway to Rock. And I'm not going to play any hi-hats. All I'm going to do is play kick drum and snare. And the kick drum, the downbeat, lands on the 1 and the 3 count. And the snare, the backbeat's going to land on the 2 and the 4 count. So if you're counting along with basic time, 1, 2, 3, 4, kick, snare, kick, snare. 1, 2, 3, 4. You want to get that up and down kind of feel going, with the downbeat obviously being the low frequencies in that kick, and then the upbeat or the up feel being the snare on the higher frequencies, obviously on the snare. So something like that. Now I'm going to play the song without any hi-hats. All I'm going to do is play kick and snare. I'm going to fast forward it a bit because the song has a little bit of an intro. So here we go. T, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, again, I wasn't doing anything but kick and snare. And for anyone who is their first time on the drums, you can actually follow along with that play along almost the whole way through, just playing kick and snare. And anyone can do that. In fact, if you ever go to a concert and you all of a sudden get the whole audience clapping, thousands of people who aren't drummers in the audience all clapping along. They're keeping time, they're following along with the song, and they're clapping on the backbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So as drummers, we tend to overthink things a lot, but that's as simple as it is. If the audience is clapping on the backbeat, you can hit the snare on the backbeat. And all we're doing is kicking on the 1 and the 3. 1, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's exactly what exercise number 1 is. Kyle, throw the sheet music on. You're going to see there's no hi-hats. It's very simple, all quarter notes. All we're doing is going back and forth, kick, snare, kick, snare. What to focus on here when you're doing this, because it is super easy, focus on your power. Focus on the note spacing between each note, trying to make those even. And what I mean by that is the amount of time before you play your snare after you kick, or the amount of time that you play your kick after you hit the snare. Make sure those are even. That's going to make your timing feel good. Okay, so use a metronome if you want. And I'm just going to quickly load up a metronome here. And I'll do a super slow. So I'm going to probably do this at 80 beats per minute for starters. And again, practice all different tempos. Here's 80. So each one of those clicks is going to be a count. We're going to count to 4, then we're going to repeat. Every time you count to 1 and a 3, you're going to hit your bass drum, and every time you count to 2 and a 4, you're going to hit your snare. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, for the drummers out there who are intermediate and they can do this with their eyes closed, that's fine. But remember that some of the best drummers out there are drummers that just play that groove, but they play it really, really well. Listen to 90% of the songs on the radio, most of those beats, a lot of intermediates can already play, but can they play them well? And that's the how of all of this. So even if you're an intermediate, make sure you do still practice that. Make sure your backbeat's solid. Make sure your timing and note spacing is there. I remember Jerry Adolph used to say he used to practice playing that same groove just with hi-hats for hours and hours a day just so he can get the feel down. And now look at him. He's just one of the best feeling drummers out there. So let's move on to the next one because that's pretty simple. Kyle, throw up number 2. Number 2, we're just going to be adding hi-hats. And so now we're going to get a right hand into the mix and we're going to be playing it on our hats. Closed, by the way, so put your foot down on the hi-hat. And we're going to be playing every time we kick or every time we hit the snare, we're going to hit the hi-hat with our right hand, okay? What we're going to focus on this time is making sure that the notes are lining up, which means when I kick and hit the hi-hat at the same time, they're sounding like one note. Or when you kick and hit the snare, it sounds like one note as well. Now on this exercise, we're not actually going to kick and play the snare at the same time, so make sure your hi-hat and snare sound the same when you're hitting them. One common problem I see drummers do that are beginners is they flam the notes or they play them just not right at the same time. A little bit before the one note, a little bit after the one note, something like this. So we want to try and avoid that. So very, very simple. Counting 1, 2, 3 for his 80 beats per minute again. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, what we have there is 2-limb independence, which means at any one point in time, only 2 limbs are working at the same time, either your right foot and your right hand, or your right hand and your left hand. So it's pretty simple. Just take it slow and work on that in its most simplistic form. Let's move on, because even with that groove there, you can already play along to AC/DC. So we're going to add in 8 notes now. If you, Kyle, you want to throw up the 3rd exercise there. 8 notes. All we're doing now is we're doubling up what we're playing on our hi-hat. So instead of playing 1, 2, 3, 4, we're going to be playing what's called 8th notes. And you can see on the sheet music, the one little flag that comes across all the notes, that represents 8 notes. And if you're actually counting along, you count 8 notes like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So we're just adding an and in there. Again, make sure your note spacing's there. Make sure you're not flamming any of the notes that are played at the same time. And it should sound like this. I'll go really, really slow. Okay, let's do it to a click. And I'll speed it up. I'm going to go to 100 this time. Here we go. All right, now, I could probably ask whoever's watching right now who can play that beat, and probably everybody would say I can. And if not, that's totally fine. But I see a lot of drummers move away from this beat too early. They try to make it different by adding more snare in, by adding ghost notes, by adding more kick, by doubling up your hi-hats or whatever. But they do that too prematurely. Like I said, that beat there is in so many songs that have made millions and millions of dollars, and it's just simple. But it's how you play it. Make sure you're playing it well before you move on. So practice that. Practice it with different tempos. Practice it with no tempo at all. When you are playing this groove, you can change the whole feel of the groove just by changing the voice in which you play your hi-hats on, or your right hand on, sorry. So if you're going to consider a song will have different parts to it. Normally, a song will have a verse and it'll have a chorus. Sometimes it'll even have a bridge. So for these different sections of the song, you have to change what you're playing up on the kit Otherwise, it's going to sound really a bit too monotonous. And you don't have to change the beat. The pattern that we're going to play is exactly the same. All we're going to do is we're going to open up our hi-hats. So instead of playing this, we're going to take our hi-hat foot up off the pedal or just release some tension on it, open up these hats a bit, play the exact same beat. You have a completely different sounding feel now. Same beat, bit more volume, bit more grit, more intensity, and that's what you're going to want to do when you switch to a new section of the song, be it a chorus or be it a bridge. You can also take that same pattern that you're playing on the ride or the hi-hat and move it to your ride cymbal. Exactly the same groove, and you're not changing anything up here. You're just moving your right hand from your hi-hats over to your ride, like this. So right there, you've got 3 different parts now. You have the ride cymbal for when you go to a bridge, you have closed hats for the verse, and you have open hats for the chorus. Right there, that's a song. You can play all 3 parts, all the same beat, very simple. Now, let's talk about how to transition those parts from the verse to the chorus to the bridge, and from the bridge to the back to the verse again. That's the one step that's missing. You right now can already play a basic groove. You can practice it in time with the metronome, and you can switch the voices up so you can get a verse, a bridge, and a chorus kind of feel. The one missing link is fills, and that's what we're going to talk about now. So fills are basically, just like I said, a transitional piece that you play on the drum kit that takes a song from one point to another, or your groove from one point to another. Fills usually happen right before you're going from a verse to a chorus, or sometimes when you're going from a chorus back into the verse. You can play fills at any point of your groove if you want, but it might just busy things up. So it's usually good to save those for transitioning from the chorus to the verse, or from the verse to the chorus, or whatever. A good rule of thumb, 4 bars or 8 bars. Since music is counted in 4/4, and you guys, you know this, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, a lot of times verses and patterns and licks in music is phrased in 4s as well, or in 8s. And that just basically means every 4 bars or every 8 bars, something's going to change. So it's a good rule of thumb to think about fills, playing them every 4 bars or playing them every 8 bars. But let's not talk about that right now. Let's just focus on what a fill is and your very first fill to play. Kyle, can you throw up number 4 for me? Now, number 4. In fact, let me just see here. Can you throw up number 6, I believe it would be? Number 6 we're going to start with here. And this is just a very simple 16th note roll on the snare drum. And this is the fill that you're going to hear in so many rock songs, and it's one that's going to get you through almost any rock song you encounter. This is what it sounds like. So it's 1 bar long. It lasts 4 counts. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. And you're playing that all on the snare. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. That's the fill we're going to keep with, and that's the fill we're going to learn today. When you're playing a fill, it's always good, and this is not 100% all the time, but most of the time, it's good to end that fill with a crash. And we're going to kick the bass drum and crash at the same time so it sounds beefier. Now that crash is going to represent the 1 count of the next bar, or count 1 of when you're starting your next beat. So if you're playing a fill, you're going to crash out of that fill right back into the beat that you already were playing before. Now, because these are transitional pieces, what we're going to do is we're going to practice going from closed hi-hats. We're going to play the fill, we're going to crash back into the beat, and then we're going to open the hi-hats, just to show it's changing to a different part. So with this fill, play it on the 1 count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1, 2, 3, 4. Just like that. I'm going to show you what I mean. So in that example, I did 1 bar beat, 1 bar fill, back into 1 bar beat with my hats open, 1 bar fill, back into my closed hi-hats. Now I said this fill is so useful, so versatile. You guys probably already know it, and it's just right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, 16 times on the snare drum. So why do I have 2 other versions of this? Number 3 and number 4, or I guess number 4 and number 5. Well, that's because this fill doesn't have to take up a whole bar all the time. And that's where I think a lot of beginner drummers get hung up. They don't know how long to play a fill for. They don't know maybe when to play the fill. So I'm going to give you 3 options for this fill that are very, very common. So if you look at number 4, you're going to see that this fill now is being cut up into a quarter of the length. So before we had a full bar of 16th notes, now we only have 4 16th notes, and it's landing on the 4 count. So if you're counting along, 1, 2, 3, 4, right when you hit that 4, that's when you're going to play 4 notes on the snare drum, 4 E and a. This is what we call a quarter bar fill, and I use it all the time. In fact, it's probably one of the most used fill, what's the word I'm looking for? Durations. One of the most useful fill durations out there is a quarter bar fill because it's not a lot of notes. It's something that just lifts your beat a little bit, doesn't get in the way with a lot of stuff, and you can use it anytime in your song. So if you're counting that one, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E and a crash. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 E and a crash. Just like this. Now again, practice going from just playing that fill into the open hats, then play that fill maybe going into the ride cymbal. Keep the same beat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play 3 or 4 bars rotation here. I'm not just going to go back and forth this time. I'm going to give it some phrasing, just like this. So I was counting 4 bars there. And on the 4th bar, as soon as I hit the 4th count, I played the fill. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 2 and 2 and 3 and 4, 3 and 3 and 3 and 4, 4 and 2 and 3 and 4 and a boom. Just like that. Okay, the next one, number 5, is a half bar fill. So we're taking that full bar now, or that quarter bar, and we're actually adding 4 more notes to it. Kyle, throw up number 5 there for me. So you can see we're playing 8 notes, not 8th notes, 8 notes in total. They're 16th notes, and we're playing them on the 3 count. 1, 2, 3 E and a 4 E and a 1, 2, 3 E and a 4 E. All right, now let me add some phrasing to that. Do 4 bars, then move to 4 bars on the ride cymbal with that fill as the transition. Check it out. All right, so congratulations. You can now play a beat, a rock beat, with a fill into different sections of a song. So you're almost there. Now we just need to apply this to real music. And that's where the fun begins, and this is also where some drummers get held up. And I was just responding to an email the other day where a member was asking, I can't figure out songs. I can't figure out when the verse starts and when the chorus starts. And he says, my drumming sucks. And I says, that's not a drumming skill. Listening and being able to understand music and the structure of a song isn't a drumming skill. It's a listening skill. And we as drummers and musicians need to be able to do that with all music. It's not something that's just a drummer's skill, and it's not something that you practice on the drum kit. You practice that without even holding drumsticks. When you're listening to songs, guys, try and pick out the changes of a tune. Sometimes they're vocal cues, but most of the time, they're going to be changes of the volume of what's going on. You might hear another instrument added, maybe some more guitar, maybe some piano, maybe some strings, whatever the song is, you're going to hear some sort of elevation from where it used to be to the new section. So when you're listening to songs, try and figure that out. Try and feel when that change is happening. Give yourself some sort of cue. Maybe it's a vocal cue, like I said before. Maybe you have to actually count it out. But again, a lot of times, people who are playing modern rock are going to be phrasing things in 4s and 8s, so you can basically get away with counting it out too if you want. Now, with all of our play-alongs on Drumeo, we have charts, so you can actually see how many verses there are and see how many choruses there are, so you can actually count them out that way. But if you're listening to one of your own tracks or one of your own songs on your MP3 player, do some work outside of drumming and just try and think about when's that chorus coming or what is a verse, because that will really help you out when you're going back and playing along to some of our play-alongs here. Okay, so let's listen to the song here. This is going to be very basic. We're going to play the exact same beat that I taught you here and the fills that I taught you here for this play-along because I want you guys to try it with me, okay? Now, the one thing about this song is there is one little shot in the beginning, and it's super easy. I'm not even going to count it out. Just listen to it a few times and you'll be able to follow along. It sounds like this. Boo, 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 tss, 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 do, 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 do. Ba, ba, ba. So 3 shots. 1, 2, 3. And I believe he does that 4 times, but you only have to listen to the song once to kind of feel that. That's the only part that might throw you off, okay? And that happens right in the intro. But apart from that, let's just listen to it once. I'm going to talk my way through it while we're listening to it so I can show you where the difference comes. I'm going to show you what I listen for so you can internalize a song before we get to playing. Here we go. By the way, this song is called Highway to Rock. If you guys want, go to the play along section. Pause this video now if you're watching it in the archives. Go to the play along section and load up Highway to Rock. It's a beginner rock song filmed by Sam Hurd a couple years back. So here we go. 2, 3, 1, da, da, 2, 3. 3 times. Here's the 4th. Da, and here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. 3, 2, 3, 4. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. 1. I'm going to stop at 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. Whoa. So I heard something different there. It went to a different chord. The bass started doing do, 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 do. So I know there that that's something different. That's a different part. I'm going to change what I'm playing up a bit. I'm going to probably open my hi-hats there. That's what I'm feeling. But another thing I wanted to say is, you notice how I only counted to 8? That's because if you keep going, you're going to start getting into double syllable letters or numbers like 11, 12, 13. That's really hard to do. So I just keep in mental note that I've already counted 8, and I usually only count up to 8. Sometimes it's 4, but most of the time it's 8. So right there I counted 2 groups of 8. So that's 16 bars for the first verse. Now I can either count those along, or I can develop my internal clock and feel that. Feel how many phrases 4 feel like. okay? But you can definitely hear something different at this part here. I'm going to rewind it a bit, and we're going to keep going. Here it comes. One more time. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you felt there it was a 2-bar. I counted 2 bars. A 2-bar kind of a bridge, or I wouldn't say bridge, I would say pre-chorus. It was setting up the chorus. And I can tell because it was a different bass riff, different strumming pattern, different chord, and then we went into the chorus. So here we are at the chorus. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 1. Okay, here we go. So I'm doing back to that intro. So right there, we went back to that intro. Dun, dun, dun. But if you notice, it only went through it twice. So now as a drummer who can internalize things okay, because I've been doing it for a while, I will just keep a mental note of that. But for you guys out there, you might want to write it down. And we have the chart you can print out already for this, so you don't need to. But if you need to write your own notes, feel free. So that's how I count the song out. We're going to play the whole song now. And I'm going to get any questions you have afterwards. Like I said, this is very beginner. So any beginners out there, feel free to ask any question. No question is a stupid question. So let's do this song. You know how I was counting it out there. You kind of felt what I was feeling or heard what I was feeling. Going through 2 different parts of the song. Chorus, pre-chorus, verse. That little shot part there. Let's actually play it now with the same beats that I was doing. Now, when do you play those fills? I'm going to play those fills wherever. Obviously, I'm going to hit the transitions, but I'm going to show you that if I play a fill and the transition doesn't happen, it's still not going to sound bad. I'm just going to play a fill, and we're going to hope to see where it goes. As long as I'm playing with power and conviction, it should sound good. Now, again, if you guys can't get the fills down yet, just play basic time first. As you play basic time and listen to the song at the same time, it's going to just click. Things are going to start internalizing. You're going to start feeling the transitions, and you're going to want to naturally complement those transitions. So if you can't play the fills yet, just play common standard time, even if it's not with the hi-hats, just kick and snare. You guys can follow along on your desks too if you're watching without drumsticks. So here we go. Okay. Now, how was that for you? Were you able to follow along? Now, for you watching live, I know you might not have been playing it right then and there, but give it a try afterwards and let me know how it goes. Where did you stumble? What was the hardest part? I would love to answer those questions and help walk you through it. And I remember a couple times on there, I missed the snare. I hit the rim and not the actual snare, and you heard that. So you got to make sure that your snare does not deviate from the backbeat, or otherwise that's the first thing that's going to make that groove sound terrible. Second thing was, I played a couple fills there that weren't in the transition, but they still worked. Okay, it's a very, very safe fill that I played, and that's why I wanted to teach it to you. And I played quarter bar fills, I played half bar fills, and I played a full bar fill in there a couple times. Now, when you're playing this, you'll start to hear the guitar riff almost like a melody on its own, and you'll be able to sing along to it and catch little things, you know, towards the very end here. If you listen to the bass, listen to this part here. Okay, so for me, I was listening to that bass. Now, if I scroll a little bit further back in the song, listen to the bass here. So it's really low. Now, all of a sudden, when the end comes, here we go. Still one more rotation. There it is, right here. So you hear that bass elevated right at the very end, which tells me, okay, this is the last rotation for the chorus, be ready to end it. Sometimes songs don't have really easy cues that you can listen for. You actually might have to count it out. But this song has a pretty simple cue for the end, and that's that bass going all the way to the top. So when you're playing, you have to have enough headspace to be able to listen to that. And again, that's more of a listening practice exercise than a drumming practice exercise. Okay, so I'm gonna leave it at that for now. Obviously, you can expand on those beats. You can play more bass drum. You can play a bass drum in between the hi-hat notes. You can change that snare fill. You can play that fill on your toms. You don't have to keep it on the snare. But make sure your timing and your power and the simplistic beat is there and your simplistic fills are there before you go and explore. Don't think it's boring, because listen to AC/DC. Listen to Michael Jackson. Very simple beats, but they're played well. And that's the essence of this lesson, is being able to play rock, super simple, but with power. Because all those beats and fills you can play in multiple styles of music, multiple genres of music. But does it sound good in rock? And for you electric kit players, it's going to be a struggle, because you're going to be wanting to play light, because you don't need to play heavy on an electric kit. You can tap. But when you get behind a kit at a stage or a venue or a live show, or even with a bunch of buddies in a garage, you have to play powerful. It's the essence of rock. You don't hear a lot of rock players playing quietly. All right, Kyle.
All right, Mr. Dave, got some questions for you.
Perfect. And you've been watching the chat. I haven't been able to check the chat. How is it going? Are people following along, or is it too easy for them?
It doesn't look like there's any comments regarding too easy or too hard.
Good,
so must
good.
be just right.
Good, good. So let's get to the questions. Start at the top.
All right, so first off, we have a question from Solo Rider.
Yeah.
And
Solo Rider, good to see you, buddy. He's a VIP member.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Solo Rider says, "Hi Dave, some song transcriptions show a hi-hat on the end of one after a crash and some don't.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever play the hi-hat on the end of one after a crash?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, great question, Solo. So in terms of notation and transcription, take that with a grain of salt, because it's a map, a guideline for you guys as drummers to play along. And it's basically telling you when you crash, you obviously are going to be playing your right hand on the crash cymbal, so you can't play your hi-hats at the same time, so crash, then get right back into it. Sometimes it feels rushed. If I were to play something fast and hit a crash, sometimes it's going to feel too rushed to go back and hit the and of one on here, so I'll just ignore that and go back on the two. Other times, when I really want to keep that meat going, and by meat I mean hi-hats, when I want to keep that meaty hi-hat going at the same time as my crash, I'll hit both at the same time. I'll give you an example of that. that's a technique I've actually been doing for years, and it just happened because I would hate playing my crash on a rock song, go back to my hi-hats, and it feels like there's just a gap in the hats for one note, you know? Shh, crash, and then back to the hats, and it threw me off. So I would play my crash and my hats at the same time. Now, when it comes to whether you want to go back to the and of one or not, that's just dependent on how fast the song is, and is it going to sound better with it, or is it going to throw your groove off just a little bit, which is not good. Most of the time, I would recommend to err on the side of caution, where go back on the 2. There's a lot of high frequencies happening from your crash anyway, so a lot of times you're not even going to notice, the audience isn't going to notice a missing hi-hat click in there. But here's coming back in on the and of one and then coming back in on the 2, so you can hear the difference. So the difference is very subtle, and if I was playing faster, I would most likely stick on the 2. Okay, so hopefully that answers your question, but it was a good one there, Solo. Kyle.
All right, looks like we have one more from Solar Rider.
Okay, sure.
And this is more of a gear question here.
Yep.
Solar Rider says, when you have multiple crash cymbals on your kit,
yes,
are there certain rules that you follow to determine which crash goes on which side of the kit?
No, no rules. I've seen opposite. I've seen small crash on this side, big crash on that side. I have set mine up all different ways. It's whatever you feel most comfortable with. What I like to do is whatever side or whatever cymbal that I'm crashing on the most or riding, I like to put over here. I like to put it above my ride cymbal because that's the cymbal that I ride on. My accent cymbal usually goes in front of my tom, and that's usually a 16-inch. So I have an 18-inch here and then usually a 16-inch here. And then whatever you have, like a China. I mean, I played my China right above my tom, really low. I played my China really high, vertically this way. So there's no real rules about it. Some drummers, most drummers that I know will have some sort of size spread. So their small cymbals will be on this side and they'll kind of get bigger as they go along. So 14, 16, 17, 18, 19 if you have those. But for me, there's no real rule. I mean, every time I sit at this kit, it's set up differently and I really enjoy that aspect of it because it gives me something new to play. And I know Jared, he'll put like a 19-inch here. I think an 18-inch here. What does he have here now? Although this isn't him. This is an 18. Oh, both 18. So there you go. So yeah, no, there's no real rule to it. Have fun, whatever works for you. Whichever cymbal you're riding the most, put it into the most comfortable position and then let everything else fall into place. So, Kyle.
All right. In terms of questions, it looks like that's the end of the list there.
Wow. Good. So that means I taught this as good as I could have. Hopefully. So hopefully that makes sense to everyone. I really want to see you guys try the song, though, more than anything. I want you guys to pick up that beat, pick up that fill. Even if you think you can play better than that, just keep it simple and play along to that song. Because at the end of the day, that's what we're drummers. That's why we're drummers, sorry, is to play with music and to play with other musicians to create music. So if you're stuck in the exercises and stuck on the sheet music all the time, you're never going to break into music, which is the end goal for most. So give it a try, practice it, and let me know. Email dave@drumeo.com or write in the comments below this video your thoughts on the concept that I was just talking about. If you have suggestions or questions, whatever, let me know. I'd love to hear them. Kyle, thank you so much, buddy.
Thank you, Mr. Dave.
Yes, and I'll see you guys all later. Tomorrow's lessons with Stephen Taylor, and then on Friday we have Mike Michalko in. It's Halloween too, by the way. And we're doing student reviews. I'll see you guys all then. Cheers.